I know, guys, getting into consulting can be very tough. As a former ex-McKinsey strategy consultant, today I'm going to share my best tips and strategies what you can do to get into consulting. Hi guys, how is it going? Welcome to another coffee break with Firm Learning. My name is Heinrich and welcome to my channel. Today I have something special for you because yesterday I did a webinar for the Munich Student Society talking about how to break into consulting. I have the whole recording here for you and I trust it has been an excellent session with lots of value and an extensive Q&A at the end. Below in the video description I'm leaving timestamps for you to see all the individual questions and sections, so if there are only specific elements that interest you, feel free to check the video description to directly jump to the parts that interests you most. Unfortunately, the start of the session, the introduction, got missing, but basically the only thing that you need to know is that in the beginning I introduced myself, I talked about my educational background studying in Munich, London and then later the MBA in France and Singapore, and then also my professional background working as a consultant, later as a project lead at McKinsey for a total of about 6 years, and now recently transitioning into a CTO role at a German fashion retailer. I then talked about how from my perspective there are 3 main elements when you think about how you break into consulting. First, what the right experience is that you need to get in. Second, how you should set up your written application materials. And third, the interview, how you get the interview right. So the webinar is set up in a way that I first give a little impulse on these 3 topics and then I open it up for a Q&A where then lots of students ask me questions. As always, if you took any value out of the video at all, please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm and also subscribe to my channel for weekly content on these topics. As some of you know, I also have an Instagram channel and my handle is Firm Learning. On top of that, a few weeks ago I put together a consulting interview preparation checklist with my best tips and tricks what you can do to ace your consulting interview. If you are interested in that, you can download it for free below in the video description. I'm leaving a link there. You just need to sign up for the newsletter and then you will get it to your inbox. But now, without further ado, let's jump into the session.
In my head, I think about 4 different types of internships that you can do. So corporate, consulting, banking, or startup, right? So from a business perspective, for me, these are the 4 categories. And I believe that either of them in theory works well. I believe that what consultant firms, of course, like to see is you having done some kind of experience in consulting before. So especially now if your target is to get into McKinsey or BCG or Bain, you know, one of the MBB firms, then probably having done some internships at one of the maybe tier 2 or one of the smaller consulting firms, maybe, you know, Roland Berger or the big 4 firms, so PwC, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, KPMG. So these kind of a bit of smaller tiers would be great internships to do to prepare yourself, but you do not necessarily need to do that. Another category that is often also well regarded is internships in corporate firms, and especially corporate firms that are potential clients of consulting firms, right? So the big blue chip companies, especially in Munich, you're lucky that there are so many, you know, DAX 30 companies in Munich, Siemens and so on. So these are companies that are clients of consulting firms, and consulting firms love that if you have interned there as well, because this shows them that you have already seen the client side of the whole thing. You already have an understanding how it feels like, right, to be at these kind of firms, to interact with these people who work there. So here as well, I would encourage you there as well. And especially again, if you're in Munich, you have the best opportunities because you just have all these great household names just, you know, behind your door. It's just perfect. And yes, just doing some entrepreneurial things, other work achievements are interesting here as well. So if you have a little entrepreneurial venture, maybe that you build up during university with your friends, this just shows that, you know, you're a bit of an entrepreneurial guy. You can show outside of the box, you can think outside of the box, and this is always very well valued by the consulting firms. Yes, consulting firms do look at extracurriculars. They do look at what you have done, you know, left and right. And I think the main rationale is that for a consulting firm, what they will expect from people is not only that you do your job well on the job, right? Not only that you do your job well being a consultant on the job, but they will also expect you to help out in your office, to take up some additional initiatives in your office, just to come up with some great ideas as well, that then you will do on top of all your consulting work, right? This will be expected from you at some point after the first year or so, that you really take up responsibility left and right, doing some initial projects, helping out in your office. And that's the fact that then you were able to commit yourself socially to some organizations, that you took the initiative in the past, you know, maybe in politics or some other social activities, this just shows that you are this type of person that to whom it just comes naturally to do all these kinds of things, and which is why extracurricular experience here is important as well. Then honors and awards. This is kind of the fourth experience section. One thing that I believe for some people is very present, and for other people they just do not have it in their mind at all, is scholarships. So I think that scholarships can be very helpful, and for two things, right? So first, of course, it helps you during your university degrees because you get money and also a great network if you are in these scholarship programs. But it's also a very good signal to consulting firms, because the reason is that especially these BMBF scholarship programs, so if you don't know it, it's BMBF is Bundesministerium für Bildung und Forschung. So it's one of the big, the big ministerien in Germany, one of the big government departments in Germany. And they have a scholarship program, and they have, I think, 12 or 13 different institutions that give out their scholarships. And probably the most well-known is the Studienstiftung des Deutschen Volkes. But then there are also all kinds of scholarships. Each political party has one of the institutions, but then there's also the Stiftung der Deutschen Wirtschaft. All the big religions have an institution to which they give scholarships and so on. So just research it if you're not familiar with that. It's a very great opportunity. And at least as far as I know, you do not necessarily need to be a German citizen to get the money to do your own research here, but it's a great opportunity both to get funding, and it is really high regarded, is highly seen by German employers, because it shows them that you were already able to go through a pretty advanced recruiting process, a pretty advanced selection process due to this whole scholarship thing, because often they have then a weekend of assessment center or something like that that you need to go through in order to get admitted to that. So that really shows that that you're just up to the task, right? And if they now invite you to their interview process, they have some confidence that you were already able to pass such a difficult process in the past. And at McKinsey, at least, I'd say that 60–70% of the people probably had one of these BMBF scholarships. So it's pretty common. Lots of people have it, and I really encourage you to get it. Also for me, it was a great experience. Besides that, of course, Dienstlist, other academic honors, try to collect this stuff as well. And if you have any prizes, of course, this is always well regarded, right? And this now, of course, is then also the content that then you should try to get on your CV, because this is the stuff that will make you interesting for these big strategy consulting firms. I'm sure you have lots of questions on that, so I'm sure then later we can also dive into that. Let me just quickly go over the presentation first, though, because now we are going to the second element, and this is now the written application. And this pretty much consists of two main documents, namely the cover letter and the CV. And the cover letter here, I know that many people stress out about a lot. Oh my dear, what am I writing in this cover letter, right? And I believe the truth is that this is pretty much seen as a hygiene factor. And this means that, having like a super great cover letter, this is not what will get you the job, right? I mean, nobody is going to say, oh, wow, this guy, he is just such an amazing cover letter. But of course, if you just mess up here, if you do something that's unprofessional, then this will just be seen as a big no-go. And then, of course, so it's important just to get it right, but don't believe that this is now the most important thing in this whole application. And just kind of three suggestions that I want to give you, three tips that I want to give you for the cover letter. First, and this is now here the third bullet, make sure that you very clearly, probably in the first paragraph of your cover letter, that you communicate about three things. First, when you want to start. Second, in which office you want to start. And third, what is the specific role you want to start in? I mean, this for me are like the most important points of information that should be included in a cover letter. But I like to read lots of cover letters. A friend also sent me them where this is not included. So make sure that this kind of is included just as a basic points of information that should be in there. And then also answer two things, namely first, why do you want to work in consulting? What is your motivation? And then finally, like, why this firm? I mean, what entices you to work at McKinsey or at BCG and so on? And I know this can be difficult because, I mean, these firms are in the end not that difficult if you compare them. But I think what's always something great that you can draw on is if you've been to a recruiting event and you really enjoyed the people there, if you maybe know a name of a recruiter also that you work to. And I mean, now you know me, right? So if you want to apply to McKinsey, you can also say that I talked to an alumnus of the firm and you just really liked it, right? So, I mean, just pointing out some personal relationships that you have and just pointing out that due to these personal relationships, this is what you really believe, that you like the people, that you like the style, that you like the culture. This is just one of the pointers you could draw on if you talk about now choosing a specific firm. A few thoughts on the CV. So here, I know that in Germany, many people like the 2-page CV format. I believe using 2 pages for your CV, it's also okay. For sure, do not use more than 3 pages. I mean, this will be very bad. Just try to stick to 2. And personally, I believe that the 1-page format is the way to go. It's the best format. It's just so amazing just to have everything on one piece of paper. Just you can just grasp it so much better. I just love that, and I'm sure that the HR departments will love that as well. So whenever possible, try to get it down on 1-page CV. And here, you know, I know many people are saying, "Oh, Heinrich, I'm just such a great guy. I just did so much stuff in my life. You know, no way I'm going to be able to fit that on 1 page." And I mean, this is just complete BS, right? I mean, even if you are like a CEO of a DAX company with 30 years of work experience, you will always be able to put it on a 1-page CV. So just push yourself hard here to do that. Regarding the CV, I think the key sections should be pretty much what we discussed in the last page. So education, work experience, extracurriculars, honors and awards, and then also other qualifications. So these should be kind of the main chapters that you then have there and that you then discuss. And there's 2 more general remarks. What I see often made wrong in CVs is regarding the highlighting your contribution. And often people use formulations such as, you know, we did something, our team did this, we did something. In the CVs, in the bullets that you write on your CV, make sure that you very much focus on what you did, what your impact was, what your contribution was, what you achieved in a specific job, in the last internships. What did you do? What was your contribution? And whenever possible, also quantify that. Yeah, so whenever possible, put a number to it to really make sure that, you know, it's very tangible what your achievements, what your impact actually is. And now, because I think now I'm already over the time of the 50 minutes that I was supposed to talk, just a few quick thoughts on, you know, the interview process, right? So the 3rd key building block of getting in. So usually there are 3 aspects of that. You have the CV interview, you have a case interview, and you have an experience interview. And sometimes this can be a bit mixed depending on the firm. Sometimes you know, have an interview where it's both a CV interview and a case interview, or it's an interview where you have the case and then an experience interview. But just a few brief pointers on these 3 interview types. So just first as an explanation, what is a CV interview? A CV interview is where you basically go over the CV with your interviewer, right? So the CV, the interviewer, you sit together with the interviewer, and then common questions are things like, okay, please introduce yourself, or please guide me through your CV. So these are some very basic questions that you will find in almost every interview process. And just make sure that you have a little concise talk prepared, right? So if somebody asks you, okay, please give me a little introduction about yourself, that this is now not, you know, the first time you think about what to say, but that you have like a little talk, maybe 5 minutes or so prepared, where you really focus on the most important stuff. And you are able to give a little presentation about your CV, about your experiences in 5 minutes or so to really guide your interviewer through. I think this is really the most important thing, that you not get like lost on one of the minor details in your life, but are able to give a nice and concise presentation on your CV. The second is the case interview. And I know this is probably what most people are afraid of when they think about interviewing with consulting. I mean, this is where people go crazy, right? And really don't know what to do. And here, just my main recommendation would be, yes, you should practice, and yes, you should read all the material that's out there on the internet. There are lots of great resources where you can prepare for cases. What I believe you should not do is now to learn 50 frameworks for all different subtypes of questions that you could be asked. I mean, you will just go crazy if you do that, right? So it's not about learning lots and lots and lots of frameworks by heart that then you need to repeat in the interview process, because this will also not come across as natural. This will not come across as really, you know, you finding an innovative solution to a problem that you will provide in the case interview. But rather what I would recommend you to do instead is prepare 2 or 3 basic frameworks, 2 or 3 basic frameworks that you can use to qualitatively structure problems, structure things. And, you know, if you just start learning, start reading into these frameworks, I'm sure that after some time you can really distill it to 2 or 3 ones that will really help you to answer most of the questions. Yes, learn these frameworks, practice them, but 2 or 3 are enough. No need to learn 50 frameworks for every little subpart. And then the last thought regarding the case interview, what really helped me when I prepared for my interviews is that I paired. I put together with, I think it was a wonderful lady at the time that interviewed also with BCG and some other firms. And we then met probably once a week or so. And we sat together, and for each session, we prepared a case for each other. And then we always interviewed the other person. And this really worked out pretty well, because this way we both got practice. We also got a bit of an experience as being an interviewer, because this is also an interesting experience, right? What do you look out for then for the other candidate? And then we gave us feedback. So I would very much encourage you, because I believe the case interviews are practice. So the more you practice it, the better. And you should not only practice by reading, but you should really practice by doing some actual mock interviews. This will be helpful to you. This is what really will help you then in the actual interview. And then finally, the experience interview, or some people also call it the impact interview. This is an interview type where the interviewer will ask you to talk about specific situations, specific instances that you faced in your life, what happened there, and how you reacted to that. And here common questions are things like, okay, please talk about a situation where you had an interpersonal conflict with somebody in your team and how you solved it. Or maybe you had a conflict on a content matter, right? So you disagreed with another person on what the best way is to move forward here, and then how you solved it. Or maybe a situation where you really showed leadership, where you really had an impact that you're really proud of. And what did you do? How did you achieve that? So questions like that, and then where you are supposed to come up with tangible situations to talk about that, where you really highlight your leadership abilities, your leadership experiences, and how that might be applicable in the future. And here my three main recommendations would be: first, these questions, they're pretty easy. It will usually not be like huge surprises, right? So it's pretty easy for you to foresee what types of questions will be asked, namely exactly the questions that I just told you, and some basic variations of these kind of things. So you need to prepare yourself in the way that when you get being asked these questions, you should never put yourself in a position that then in the interview on the spot, you need to come up with a crazy story that maybe happened a few years ago, whatever, because this is not how it should go, right? Instead, you should at home already think about situations like that. You should have them very well prepared, and you should already have an idea for these kind of main archetypes of questions, what situation you will talk about, so that you pretty much already know what you're going to say. And this is not something that you should then come up with on the spot in these interviews. And also just to warn you here, this experience interview, especially compared with a case interview, that's something that I feel like many people significantly underestimate. You know, they put lots of time and practice on the case interview, but they don't really spend lots of time at all on this experience interview part. But at least what I know about this, the experience interview is often at least as important as the case interview. So really do yourself a favor to also get the preparation down for that as well, and just make sure that you have all of this ready. Yeah. So this is just my little inputs. Now I'm, of course, very happy to get your questions.
Well, first of all, Heinrich, thanks so much for such an insightful session. And no worries that you went a little bit over time. Actually, that gave me some time to breathe, and now I'm back.
All right.
So, all the participants, many of you submitted questions during the registration process, and we have it right now. So I will start with those questions. Meanwhile, feel free to ask questions live right now. You can raise your hand, and then I will unmute you, and you can phrase your question directly to Heinrich. So to start with, Heinrich, you have a pretty interesting background with degrees from several universities and in different fields. So how was that whole overall experience of education for you, and how did it help you and shaped you with your career journey?
Yeah, and so to be honest, I also thought about that a couple of times. For me, probably the most formative time was while I studied in Munich at the University of Munich at LMU. I think this is really the time where, from an academic perspective, I learned most. And even though then later, I was in London at LSE, which is also considered, a good private university. Later, also I did an MBA, also, of course, a very expensive program where you can, spend lots and lots of money on that. For me, really the most formative experience is what I've done here in Munich, here at LMU, and you guys at TUM. So just can encourage you just to take advantage of that experience as much as possible. Just engage in all the different, student clubs, talk to other people. There's also a great and vibrant startup scene in Munich. This is really where I just took away a lot from. And all my specific background, after high school, I just wanted to study business, but I was always also interested in philosophy. So for me, it was also a bit of an experiment just to try to do a double degree then in the University of Munich. So I just signed up for these 2 bachelor programs, the philosophy program, and I had a minor in history of art when I studied in Munich, and then also the business one. So first, it was for me more an experiment to see, how long I can do it, but then in the end, it turned out quite well. And then for me, also great experience was in Munich, the CDTM, the Center for Digital Technology and Management. They have an honors degree. It's open for both TUM students and LMU students. For me, this was probably one of the most formative experience at all at Munich. I can highly, highly recommend that. So especially for those who are still in the beginning of the bachelor or also at the beginning of the master, if you still have time to do that, check out the CDTM program. I can really highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's an excellent program for sure. And for the next question, I will allow Adil to phrase his question. So here you go, Adil.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions, but I will ask one question, and then if other participants are done with the question, then I can come back to my other questions. First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Heinrich, for the talk. It's very useful. My question is, keeping in mind the increasing number of consulting projects that are right now getting into the sector of technology, what do you think are the most valuable skill sets within the consulting area?
Yeah. So I think this, of course, now depends a bit on what role exactly in consulting you want to go for, and probably also what firm you're going to go for. So now, assuming you would go for, McKinsey or BCG or anything like that, here the truth is that, if you go in there, if you're a consultant, this more generalist consulting profile is still what people will look for most. And now, of course, if you want to do projects in technology, if you want to maybe be affiliated with the digital practice, then having some relevant experience here, of course, would help. And I think that this is not now specific. It's not the case that now you need to have a super specific skill set, work in digital technology projects and strategy consulting firms. And myself, I mean, I'm not having now a super focused digital profile for myself. And I still did lots of digital projects at McKinsey because you just learn over time, you just pick it up. But of course it helps. And probably specifically, everything that's basically a hot buzzword at the moment will somehow be helpful, right? So if you do something with data science, if you have some experience with AI, but even things like online marketing, this is something where lots of big companies struggle with, personalization at scale, how, if I'm a big DAX company and I want to target my customers, how do I leverage my data to do that? How I make sure that everybody gets the right ad for the things that they really need? Big data projects, how do I, but also network design, system design, how do I now improve the system landscape in the company? How do I integrate the legacy systems and so on? So these are all things that are relevant from the strategy consultant perspective, and you will be able to leverage that. There's no one specific skill that you need to have. I think you can draw on all these different types of backgrounds. And now, of course, if you're more interested in an IT consultant type of roles, I don't know if you want to work at Accenture there in the technology arm or something, then it might get more specific based on the role that you're interested in. So when I was a student, I did an internship, for instance, at Accenture, and I was working on an SAP implementation project. And there was very super specific on, business intelligence, BI, being able to, build these OLAP cubes and all the stuff around that, right? So then this, it gets more tailored, more relevant to the specific job. But in general, yes, digital skills, tech skills are well regarded. It will probably not be now the super great deal breaker. So, I mean, as a consultant, the things that they usually still go for is more this generalist type of skill set. But then having a strong tech focus on one or two very relevant skills will kind of be the cherry on top that then can really help you to get in.
Yeah, thank you.
And next is Christopher.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, nice, thank you. First of all, thank you for the short overview. I really liked the insights. And my question would be, I'm currently in the second semester of my bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also aiming to start a double degrees from this winter semester on.
Okay.
And on the homepage, for example, of McKinsey, they usually write you can apply for an internship from your third semester on, but is there like a certain point or like point in time in your studies where you would recommend like an internship, or where you say like at this point in time it makes actually like sense to start an internship because you can actually like work on some project or have enough like knowledge?
Yeah. So yes, so here my recommendation would be, or what you need to understand, to put it this way, what you need to understand is that first, if you apply and then you don't get in, usually you get a block of at least 1 year, sometimes even 1.5 years before you can apply again, right? So if you basically apply after your second or third semester and then you don't get in, then usually you cannot just apply again 1 semester later. And at least for my knowledge, this is not only the case for McKinsey, but for most of the other consulting firms as well, right? So you should probably not apply if you feel like you don't have a realistic chance at the moment, because this will really just hurt you then, because then you will not be able to apply later again. This is just the first consideration to have in mind. And then the second thing is that, you know, if they hire an intern, especially at the MBB consulting firms, so McKinsey, BCG, and so on, they will put you on an actual project team. So you will be, at least in like 99% of the cases, you will work at the client on an actual engagement. You will be in meetings with clients alone. You know, the team will depend on you. And for these reasons, they will have, let's say, kind of some minimum standards that they will want you to get or to achieve, you know, if they hire you for an internship. And so it's not the case that they basically have kind of a staggered requirement list that they think, okay, if somebody's only in the second semester of the bachelor, then, you know, this is the level he needs to be at. If he's at the 4th semester of the bachelor, then this is the level he needs to be at, or in the first master semester, then I expect even more. But pretty much the standard of getting hired as an intern is pretty much the same. Doesn't matter if you're in your bachelor and your master, right? So, and for these reasons, yes, you can do an internship during your bachelor also. I did mine internship after my 5th semester of my bachelor, and it's absolutely possible. I just would be a bit careful, because if you are, you know, still early in your studies, probably you're also still a bit younger, maybe a bit less mature, you know, you also, the perception of you might also be even more junior than maybe a year or 2 years from now. So just be a bit realistic about where you currently stand with your skill set, with your personality, whether you would really be able to, you know, sit in front of senior clients, or whether maybe it makes sense to wait another year or so to get a bit more experience, maybe have done another internship until then you're really ready to apply.
Thanks, Heinrich. I will take one question from the questions that were submitted before.
Mm-hmm.
So the participant asks, is there a more focus on any particular industry in German consulting scene than others?
Yes. So in general, you need to understand that actually Germany is a country that likes consulting a lot. Yeah. So for the German market for the consulting firms is one of the most important markets in the whole world. And in the US, so at least at McKinsey, it was the case that they have split the US in like 3 main offices. And so let me just, I don't want to now talk about specific numbers, but let's just say that like Germany is like an insanely important market. And even if you control for the size of the economy, so for the GDP or whatever, here consulting services play still a larger role compared to many other countries. So for whatever reason, German companies like consultants. This is just a fact. And what this means is that if you are here in Germany, if you work in Germany, probably you are also in terms of career perspective of, you know, the chances of making it to partner and so on, probably are better than in other countries like UK or France or so on, not only because the size of the economy is larger, therefore, you know, more opportunities, but also many industries are more inclined to, you know, work with consultants. But then, yes, there are some differences among industries. So I would say that especially if you work for a large company like McKinsey, you will have opportunity to work in every industry. I mean, there's pretty much no industry that we do not serve or that we didn't serve. So it's not that, you know, if you sign up with a company such as McKinsey, there's this one industry where you will not work for sure. But the truth is also that in some industries, there are just significantly less opportunities than in other industries. And for instance, I don't know, for instance, retail. I mean, yes, there are studies, projects in retail all the time, and I did also plenty of retail projects during my time. But whenever you look at a retail staffing newsletter, so basically we have like regular staffing newsletters sent out to all the people, so you know what the current opportunities are if you're free for a new project. And if you then were looking at a retail newsletter, often there are like 3, 4, 5, 6 new things going on at a given point in time. And if you look at for instance, advanced industries, automotive, these more tech-oriented industries, you have lots of pages of opportunities that you could start, right? So just to give you a bit of a sense of perspective. So there are some differences, and specifically banking is big, automotive is big, advanced industries is big, pharma can be very big. So these industries is where it's very common. Not that big are things like retail, consumer goods, also the digital thing. So companies like Google, Facebook, and so on. I mean, don't want to say that there's no opportunities at all with these companies, but they're not that affine to consulting than these more old school German tech companies, I'd say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have another question that goes in line with this one in our Q&A. So the participant asks that, would you recommend to get into in-house consulting of the industries that you have mentioned? And is it possible to have a transition from in-house consulting in these industries to the big 4 or big 3, let's say?
Yeah. So it depends on your goal, I'd say, right? So I think the main reason why people do in-house consulting is because they believe it's pretty much comparable to a trainee program, I'd say, right? So you start at an in-house consulting firm, and then you have these different projects, and for that you have exposure to different departments, you get to know different people, and then you build a network in that company, and this will then enable you to, hopefully, this is at least the idea, to then do a nice transition to a good senior role. And I believe this is a valid rationale, it can work. And of course, then the reputation of the in-house consulting firms differ a bit firm by firm. So obviously Siemens has a very renowned thing with the Siemens management consultants. Some other programs are probably not that established. But if this is your goal, then this is, I'd say, viable. I mean, I didn't do that firsthand, but at least from what I've seen also in some companies I've worked together with these in-house consulting people. What I believe is not a good idea is to start in an in-house consulting firm, just then later to do the switch to MBB or to Big Four. At least for McKinsey, if I think about, I cannot imagine a single guy who transitioned from an in-house consulting firm. This is not to say that it's impossible, but also just in terms of the story, I just feel like it doesn't make much sense, right? I mean, if you want to do consulting, then why wouldn't you directly start with the big consulting firms? And if you want to do corporate, then rather start in a corporate role. But I mean, I think you need to be very creative to tell a convincing story here, like what your rationale should be about that, right? So probably not the best idea. It's not impossible, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend.
Great. Alberto, you are next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for the session. This is really helpful and informative, so I really appreciate it. My question is, so I'm currently in my second last semester at TUM for my master's degree in management, and I was thinking about applying to the Big 3 in their Italian offices, because that's where I'm from. Therefore, I wanted to ask you if to your knowledge, if there are any variations or differences in the recruiting process depending on where the office is located, and where could you find information on how to account for that and prepare for that, and also how much do McKinsey, BCG, and Bain value international experiences, and if that's actually something that can make a difference, or if you should focus on other things. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So first, I mean, yes, there can be some differences regarding the application process. Usually, at least with the larger firms, these differences are not huge, but they exist. So just to give you an example, when I started at McKinsey, there still was something that was called a PST, problem solving test. It was pretty much, I think maybe somebody can put himself on mute because I'm hearing myself double. Some weird echo. Yeah. So there was something like the PST, the problem solving test, and this was kind of a written test where you needed to answer, little like math problems. So you were really sitting there in the office when you conducted interviews, and then they had like a little written test. And I think in Germany at McKinsey now they don't have it anymore, but in some other countries I think they still do. And then another thing that is now currently tested at McKinsey, as far as I know, is it's kind of an online game that they use. I believe they use it also in the very first screening process. So this is something that candidates need to do at home. And it's kind of a little game. It's about ecosystems where they need to make sure that all the ecosystems are in balance or something like this. I think you can also on the McKinsey career page, you can find some basic information on that. But I believe this is not there in every country yet. Because they're just slowly testing it and then rolling it out. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure whether at the moment it's already live in Germany or not. I mean, to find out, you should just check the career page of the local office. So if you go to McKinsey, like the German McKinsey page, and they're on Karriere, you will find the basic information on how it's run in Germany. And I trust the same thing will be true if you then go on the Italian page. So check out your local recruiting page, and then there will be the key information. And then at least after you applied, and then if you get invited to an interview, then usually you will also get lots of additional information from the HR team, how exactly the interviews will be run and what will be expected from you. So of course you will get that information then beforehand. And regarding the international experience, so I think what's usually not that valued is, frankly, is languages. So now having language skills in lots and lots of different languages is usually not considered super important or whatever. I think what's of course important is English, so that you have good fluent English skills. And of course, what many consulting firms want is language skills in the local office. So, if you want to apply for a German role, especially for a client-facing role, then yes, people will expect from you not necessarily to be fluent, but at least to have kind of business level German skills. And the same is true also for other countries for their respective language. But usually it's not a huge factor now whether you can speak other languages as well. Of course, though, it doesn't hurt, and it will enable you potentially also to do projects in that country, if you want to go there then during your engagement. Regarding other experience, such as, being abroad or something like that, having spent a semester abroad, internship abroad, I think, yes, this is valued. Though again, it's more like a hygiene factor in the sense that I believe people kind of expect you to have it, right? So I believe if you have it, it's not like a huge plus. People will not be like, wow, this guy is so great because he was abroad. But it's more like the other way around. If you don't have it, then people, will rather notice it in a negative way. And this is not to say that your chances are zero, if you have never worked abroad, if you have never done a semester abroad. So it's still possible to get in, but this will be seen as, something negative. And the rationale here again is just, you will work frequently with people from other countries. Also, me working at McKinsey, probably 50% of my studies were abroad, but not in Germany. So you will also be staffed potentially on studies outside of Germany or outside of your country. And there, you can just give the people a bit of confidence that you will handle the situation well if you already show some international experience.
Thank you, Heinrich.
Sure.
I just realized we are approaching towards the end of the session, and there are still a lot of hands that are
we can go a bit over time if you want. I mean, I'm flexible.
That's great, and I would try to integrate as many as questions possible. Mm-hmm. So next question is, are salaries higher in consulting in West and South Germany than in East Germany?
So, I mean, here there might be differences now firm by firm, but my general take on that is, or maybe just to start even on an international level. So even within one company at BCG or McKinsey or whatever, yes, salaries will be different country by country. So it will be, adapted to, the local competitive situation, to the local living costs and so on. And actually Germany has pretty good salaries, actually, I'd say, compared to other countries in consulting in general. This is also true for banking. So if you, go to UK or something, I mean, especially then if you're in London, especially given that there the living costs are so much higher, I believe the salaries in Germany are really attractive and very interesting. Now within Germany, at least with the big firms like BCG, McKinsey, also the big four, you should usually expect that they will not differentiate within Germany. And the reason also is that at least at McKinsey, you can pretty much freely change offices between Germany, right? So I started actually in the Berlin office. And then I transitioned to the Munich office later, just due to private reasons because my wife moved there. So for these reasons, in general, no, they will not differentiate between Eastern and Western Germany. Though, of course, now if you're looking into smaller consulting firms, smaller boutiques or whatever, then maybe. I mean, in general, of course, it's true that in general, the average salaries in the East are lower than in the West.
I see. I'll take another participant question from the Q&A section. And the question is, it's no secret that you need really good grades to get into consulting. Do you think it's problematic or even a no-go if you didn't finish your degree within the regular time period and you took 1 or 2 semesters longer?
No, I don't think so. I mean, of course, it's good to then have some kind of rationale, but I mean, hey, it's always possible to come up with some more or less convincing reason why you did that, right? I mean, I'm sure you have a reason. Otherwise, you would have done it faster. So maybe you've been abroad, or maybe you did some cool internship. Maybe you did something else on parallel that really took your time. And then I do not think that this is a huge issue. Of course, then if you took longer and then also your grades are not that good and so on, I mean, then this can, add up to maybe an impression which is not that great. Of course, it's helpful to have completed it in the regular time, but this in most cases should not be a huge deal breaker.
Okay, so there's a question from Jayant in the chat box, and also a couple of participants during registration submitted the same question, that they have a couple of years of experience, varying from 2 to 5 years, and they have been working on this for quite some time, like getting an internship into in-house consulting or a Big Four consulting, and all the tips that you provided in the session in the beginning, they have been working on it on CV and cover letter and all those stuffs, and still things are not really working. So what would you advise to such people?
Okay. I mean, now here you would really need to look into the specifics, right? So, I mean, it might be the case that there's a problem with your documents. So here you should really make sure that these are okay. So, from a formal perspective, it's all there. And so I would recommend that you really work with some people whom you trust will be a good judge of that to then get you some feedback. And actually, if you're interested in that, on my YouTube channel, I have recently made a video about CVs where I actually review real examples of CVs of other people. And there I give also lots of tips on how to put specific things. So if you're interested in that, check out this video on my YouTube channel. But so just make sure that your material is there. And then if you still get not invited, then unfortunately, the profile just doesn't seem to meet the criteria, unfortunately. And here, of course, what then I would also recommend you, then probably the only shot that you have is just to try to network, right? So try to go maybe to career fairs, to some HR people. Maybe then also if you have the opportunity to talk to one person face to face, and maybe you can just find another guy who works at the firm who just really can get you some actual feedback on your profile, maybe also how you frame certain things. And I mean, then maybe you get a shot of, at least getting invited to the interview. Because, and I think this was also one of the questions, just to quickly touch on that. The question is, does networking help? Can you get into the firm, just because you have, in Germany, you say vitamin B, so you have relationships to some people, right? And usually for most companies, you can get to the interview by that, right? So if you know the right people and if they really like you and if you find a partner who really believes you're a great guy, he can push you to get an interview. But then from the interview, you're on yourself. I mean, then in the interview, you will then be assessed by a team, and then nobody will sabotage the whole recruiting process for you just to get you through. And even if a partner would do that, that would be probably wouldn't work and would be also super bad for his reputation. So yes, it can help you. Networking can help you to get an interview, but then from the interview, you're on yourself. So if for whatever reason your profile just isn't there, then really try to talk to these people, try to convince them. But then of course it will be difficult, and but this is in the chance that you have.
Thanks. Now Lorena asks, what was your struggle while getting into consulting? If you could share a couple of thoughts on that. And in line with it, I will quickly phrase the next question as well. If you could also share your experiences of 2 excellent projects that you did in consulting and 2 most challenging projects that you did in consulting.
Okay. So, I mean, my challenges, I mean, to be honest, I was kind of lucky because I was in my bachelor and I already did a couple of internships and I just wanted now to do a consulting internship. And then I just applied to a couple of firms, and actually then the McKinsey one was one of the earlier interviews. And I think I was well prepared. I did lots of mock case studies. I did a couple of other interviews before, and then I had the McKinsey one, and then I got in for the internship. And then actually I also canceled then the other ones because for whatever reason, I always, McKinsey was kind of my dream firm then to work at that time. And then I just signed up there. And then what's of course possible is once you do the internship, then if you perform well, then you can get an offer to work then with the firm afterwards. And then actually because my master was only 1 year, so sometimes it's kind of the time limit that, you need to then decide to join after a certain amount of time. But 1 year usually is fine. So then I was able to basically start my master already with the offer of then joining McKinsey afterwards, which was of course a super comfortable position. So I guess I just was lucky, and for these reasons, I didn't have like huge struggles, to be honest. But then of course in consulting, not with the two best and two worst projects, then you will struggle a lot then on the job, right? I mean, everybody will have bad projects, and this can be like super tiresome. And just to share two stories, I mean, one thing was, or just to break that down, just to talk about one thing here. I think in the end, what it comes down to whether you enjoy a project or not, it's not so much on the content, it's not so much on the topic, but even though of course some topics, some projects can be more interesting than other, no doubt. But what I believe, what most people feel like, then also who I'm talking to some other colleagues, the deciding factor is your team and your clients. The team that you work with, probably number one, and then the clients you work with, number two. And I was once in a tough situation where I didn't get along well with the team I worked with, and I also didn't get along well with the client or with the main clients that I was responsible for. And this really was a difficult situation because after some time, you need to, every Monday morning you fly there, then you get into the team room, and then there's a weird atmosphere in the team room. Then you talk to the clients, then there's a weird atmosphere with the clients. And then, also then on top of that, the stress of working late every day, of then talking to the partners who are not happy and so on. I mean, this is really an experience that will just, it's so tiresome, right? It crushes you so much over time psychologically. But here, I think the good part is in consulting. And I think everybody, if you work in consulting at some point in time, you will have an experience like that. But everybody will have one or two bad projects you can talk about. But the good thing is, and I think this is really a contrast compared to industry, after 2, 3, 4, 5 months, once your project is over, the cards are newly mixed again, right? So you can work together with new colleagues, you can work with a new company, and you can basically start again from a fresh slate. And then of course, over time, you really get to know the people you really enjoyed working with, the one partner you really enjoyed, the project lead you really loved, who was really a great guy. And then you can stick together with these people and then try to work more and more with these people. And then this is how you create this whole kind of set of people who support each other. And then it's just a great experience. And if you contrast that with corporate, you start in a team in corporate, you have these teammates, you have this one boss, your one team lead you will work with. And then usually for the next 3, 4, 5 years, this will be your family, right? And you can either be lucky and it works out really well, or for whatever reason, you can be really unlucky and you just really don't get along with these people at all. And then basically your only option is to switch jobs. I mean, you will never, hear that, right? I mean, if you're really at some point in a position, then at some point you just need to leave. And I mean, this is just where consulting gives you lots of flexibility. And just to talk about a positive example as well, this is really where all these things come together. So it was just one of my recent ones. It was an automotive company, an automotive supplier, and the topic itself was interesting but not super exciting. But we really got along with the clients really well. There were also some nice junior people. Then on the evening, sometimes we would go out with them. On the weekends, we would, because I was living in the same city with them, we would meet, we would have some drinks. The team was super cool. We all got along super well. The project was going well. Everybody was happy. Everybody was just having a good time. The impact was there. It all worked out really great. I mean, this, of course, also always cool if you can see that what you're doing really impacts the company in a positive way and you're really helping. And if all of this comes together, then it's just so great. And then you also don't mind anymore if you work late or if you work until late in the evening or something like that. And this is really when you love doing your job, when you really love coming into the office every day. And the truth is, it just will not be like that every day, but you will also come across these projects that are just amazing. And then over time, you can really choose more and more the people you want to work with. And this is just, I believe, the magic of working in consulting. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite exciting, I would say. And the good and bad, both things are that it will end. I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
So I'll take the next question from Ru. He asks, what is the percentage of non-Germans and non-Europeans in McKinsey? And I think in general, how much focus is there in German scene in consulting about international people? I will combine it with another question about the language. So the participant asks that my German is at intermediate level and I'm working on it. But meanwhile, I do want to get into consulting. And what would you advise me on this stage?
Yeah. So first about the quotas of Germans and so on. And of course, if you look at the company on a global level, then it's, I'd say it's representative of the geographies that you're based in, right? I mean, there's the US office there. Of course, most of the people will be from the US. In Germany, most people will be from Germany. In Asia and the specific countries, the most people will be from the local geographies. So kind of on a global level, I'd say it's very much mixed. Of course, in the German office, the majority of the people will be German. And the main reason for that is that you will need to be fluent in Germany, or at least kind of in an advanced level as a German speaker to work in the German office of most consulting firms. And again, now, if you maybe work in IT consulting, where maybe you're also not that client facing and so on, there might be some differences. But at least for the big MBB consulting firms, so McKinsey, BCG, Bain or so, you can assume that then, yes, you will need to speak the language. So what can you do if you do not have that level of proficiency in the German language, but you want to still work in Germany? And I mean, frankly, I believe the only thing, at least, again, if you now look at the MBB consulting firms, the only roles that you might be then open for are more kind of the back office roles, the analytics teams, the support teams. And here there can be some exciting opportunities as well. So especially now if you have some IT skills, there are whole statistics teams, right? Data modeling, data science teams that then support the consultants from the background. And then, yes, maybe you will also then a few days join the team on the ground at the client to help them maybe build a model together with somebody. And then you can support them in these ways. There are then also research teams. So McKinsey is called R&I, research and information. So, whenever a consultant needs to collect information from reports or whatever, then there are these research guys they can then draw on to then conduct these analysis for them. But the truth also is here. So even though I'd say these are interesting jobs and they're also very fairly compensated, it's not what you are envisioning if you work in consulting, right? I mean, it's not really the life of a client-facing consultant, and also within the firm. So even though this is kind of a constant topic, right? I mean, I'd say the culture, even though people try a lot to not now create a class system, in the firm where, one people are above the other or something like that. Yeah. It's just the fact that, there's one level with the client-facing consultants, and then there's the other level with all the rest, all the people supporting them. And I think people do a very good job of, trying to not make these people feel bad and trying to encourage them and to have a great and inclusive firm environment. And I believe in companies like McKinsey, this works really well. But I would ask myself whether this is really the experience that you want to have, or whether then there are maybe some other opportunities that maybe suit your profile, suit your goals a bit better. Because also the truth is, while it does happen, I mean, sometimes people make the switch. So I know also a couple of people who did that from these more back office research roles into then the client-facing consulting role. So it's not impossible, but I'd say it's very rare and rather unusual. So this is not something you should count on of then doing this switch. It's just very uncommon. There are some examples, but it's just very uncommon, and you shouldn't build your career based on the idea then after some years you just do the transition. So this is not something you can count on.
Thanks.
Sure.
Just checking other questions. Well, very quick note. I mean, we are almost, we are already over the time. Still, I will try to incorporate all the questions.
Sure.
Okay. I think I will take one from the pre-submitted questions, and that is, are you part of McKinsey alumni network? And could you share what role does it play after the exit?
Yes, I'm part of the alumni network, and I think everybody is who leaves the firm in good standing. So yes, frankly, I haven't used it that much yet because I also directly got a new job. I believe there's kind of a portal where you then can get in touch with other alumni. And then there are also regular events where then the alumni meet. So frankly, I haven't really made use of that. So I believe it can be helpful. It's probably not now, a life-changing experience of being in this alumni network, but of course, there are many alumni now who work in influential roles around the world in lots of companies, and are reaching out to them either via the official network or via LinkedIn or some other ways. I believe, of course, is then helpful for you in the long run. But I trust this is similar with other big firms as well.
And I mean, you also targeted this during earlier questions that it's a very high performing job and it takes a lot of time. So, however, it also depends on country to country and office to office, the culture and working hours. So how is it exactly in Germany?
Yeah. I mean, there are lots of stereotypes around that. So, I mean, the stereotype is that the German office is one of the worst offices in terms of work-life balance.
German loves to work.
Does to work, probably only topped in the negative sense by the Italian office. So the Italian office is considered even worse. And also the Japan office is considered very bad. I mean, these are probably like the top three, right? And then on the other side, people who are considered to be very chilled is all the Nordics. So if you are work in the Nordics, this is considered very laid back, but also the Dutch office, for instance, this is to be considered quite chilled. And then the rest is somewhere in the middle. I mean, here again, I mean, probably in terms of direction, this is true, right? But again, it differs a lot project by project and also the people that you work with. I mean, some projects just will make you work longer than other projects just because how the setup is, just how the requirements are. And there are also just some teams, some project leads who are more sensitive to work-life balance than others. And here again, this is now a bit also something that you will learn over time to kind of find the people that you like to work with. And then maybe these can also be the people who, do not push you until after midnight every night, right? I mean, because it just can be super tiresome after all. So, but yes, the truth is that you will work much longer than in many other jobs. The positive side of that, and this is also true for the German office, at least at McKinsey, what I experience is that the weekends are very well respected, right? And this is, I believe, a big difference to, for instance, banking. So if you work in Frankfurt in the Messeturm with Goldman Sachs or whatever, you can expect to be in the office every Saturday, every Sunday, weekends every week. This is not the case with the big consulting firms. So, I mean, yes, if there's really a hard business need and if it's now very, very urgent, then yes, you will be asked to work on the weekend, and then this will be also expected from you. But probably for me, this happened 5, 6, 7 times or so in the years I've been at McKinsey. So it does happen, but not super frequently. And so weekends are very well respected, and I believe this is a big plus.
Great. Adil is still raising hand, so I will allow him to talk.
Sure.
Adil, here you go.
Yes. My question is, does an MBA add any value to somebody who wants to enter consulting? And my second question is it possible to transition from consulting to investment banking after getting 3 to 4 years of experience in consulting?
Yeah. So the first question, I mean, yes, an MBA helps, or no, let's put it differently. I'd say consulting firms hire a lot of MBAs. This is a fact, especially if did an MBA at one of the bigger, well-respected programs. You have a good chance of then getting hired by consulting. I mean, I did the INSEAD MBA in France, and then also on the Singapore campus. And this is one of the MBA programs that is very close to consulting firms. So a lot of people then join consulting. Also, a lot of people with other backgrounds before, with industry background, corporate backgrounds, later joined MBB consulting firms. So this is for sure a path that you can take. But this is not to say that you need to have an MBA to get into consulting, especially in Germany. I'd say that MBAs are still not that popular, right? So for instance, doing a PhD in Germany is much more popular than doing an MBA. And it's not at all a must-have criteria to transition into the consulting role. So of course, now it depends on your profile, right? For some profiles, it can really help. If maybe you have a more specific corporate role, kind of more a technical role of some years of experience in a big corporate or something, then from that, it maybe can be a bit hard to now directly transition into a strategy consulting firm. And then an MBA can really help you to make you more interesting to employers, to maybe also broaden your horizon a bit. And then for these kind of profiles, it can be very helpful to have an MBA. Now you need to remind me of the second part of the question again.
Second part of the question was, I think, can you transition into investment banking from consulting after?
Yeah. So yes, this is possible. And I've also seen, I know of different people who did. Here, of course, it's helpful that then during your consulting time, you did relevant projects, right? So for instance, you did lots of due diligences, you worked maybe close to M&A things and so on. But of course, you need to realize that due diligences probably are the worst projects out there in terms of work-life balance. So because due diligences often are only 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's a very short amount of time. You work together with lots of other professionals of private equity and so on. And I knew one guy, he was just crazy. He was literally crazy. And he did one due diligence after each other. And like for a year or 2 years or so. If this is what you want to do, then feel free, right? But you just need to realize that this is then probably the type of stuff that investment banking firms will be interested in. But this is the stuff that really is one of the toughest stuff to do. And of course, there's also a middle way. Maybe you do that occasionally, and then do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you go do more normal projects, and then you do due diligences again. And of course, also some other project work in the corporate finance world and so on, where maybe it's not like due diligence all the time, can also be interesting to banks. But just be aware that probably then you need to make sure that you really also go into that direction a bit in consulting, because I believe if you just did digitalization projects or marketing and sales, in consulting, and then you want to transition into an investment bank, probably that's going to be a bit difficult.
Great. Well, I think with this, we are done with most of the questions, and we will end the session over here.
Cool.
Thank you so much once again, all the participants, and a huge thank you to Heinrich. I will quickly launch a survey. Please let us know how did you like the session, and you all know me. You all have my contact details. So do let me know if you want more such sessions. And very quickly, apologies to be nervous in the beginning. You have seen my sessions with AES. This won't happen again. And Heinrich, thanks so much for covering up by talking a little bit more.
Fine. Thank you. Don't worry, Vivek. Thank you, guys.
And again, all of you who want to get in touch with Heinrich has a YouTube channel, and he's also there on Instagram with the handle name Form Learning. He shares excellent YouTube videos on the same topic. Feel free to follow him. Feel free to reach out to him, and have a great weekend. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for
being here. Thank you, guys, and enjoy the weekend. All the best to you.
So that's it for those of you who watched until the very end. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if you still have any questions that you also want to have answered, just leave a comment below in the comment section and I'll do my very best to answer every single one. Again, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to see even more from me, and also turn on the notification bell to get informed whenever I release a new video. Good weekend to all of you. This has been Heinrich from Firm Learning. Until next week.